The message reached London long before anyone was prepared to believe it. Signals officers had repeated the confirmation 3 times, as if the universe might rewind itself out of mercy. But the words remained the same, cold and metallic, transmitted across oceans and into the heart of a nation fighting to stay alive. Both Prince of Wales and Repulse have been lost. Cause enemy aircraft. The blow landed with a weight that felt personal. These were not just ships. They were symbols of pride, of technological superiority, of the British Empire's reputation on the seas. For a century, the Royal Navy had carried itself with the unspoken belief that no enemy could ever humble it so quickly, so ruthlessly. Yet now, 2 capital ships, 2 of the most important vessels deployed to Asia, were lying at the bottom of the South China Sea. In a war room beneath Whitehall, men in uniforms and grey suits stood stiff in a haze of cigarette smoke, listening to the report being read again. The lights flickered slightly from the hum of generators, as if even the building were shaken. Admiral Sir Dudley Pound, First Sea Lord, felt a cold knot form deep in his stomach. His health was already failing. The stress of war had been grinding him down for months. But this message struck like a physical blow. He leaned over the table, gripping the edges as though anchoring himself against a wave. Both ships lost. He demanded quietly, though he had heard it clearly the first time. "Yes, sir," replied the signals officer, afraid even his breath might offend the gravity in the room. Survivors report continuous torpedo strikes. Enemy aircraft attacked in waves. No air support reached them. Pound shut his eyes, not out of denial, but as if bracing for the memory that had tormented him the moment the dispatch arrived. The debate over sending the ships without adequate air cover. The Japanese were aggressive, skilled, and swift. Everyone had known that. But this was beyond expectation. An unmistakable lesson written in fire and steel on the surface of the sea. Prime Minister Winston Churchill stood at the far end of the room, motionless, chin slightly lifted, eyes burning beneath the brim of tension that clamped his face. When he finally spoke, the silence bowed around him. "So," Churchill said, his voice low but edged with iron, "the age of the battleship ends not with a review, but with a requiem." No one dared respond. Across the table, General Sir John Dill, the head of the Army's General Staff, exhaled slowly. If this is confirmed, then Malaya stands exposed. Singapore loses its deterrent. Japan will strike with renewed confidence. Pound's hands tightened. Malaya was already exposed, but now he paused, searching for words adequate enough to fit the disaster. Now the Japanese have proven what they are capable of. This will echo through every fleet in the world. Churchill inhaled deeply, pulling strength from the weight of responsibility pressing on his shoulders. He stepped closer to the table, leaning forward slightly, eyes sweeping across the carved wooden surface covered in maps and pins. "What did our men say?" he asked. The officer swallowed and read from the transcript, voice trembling. "Survivors report the ships fought until they could fight no more. The Prince of Wales attempted evasive action, but took multiple torpedo strikes, one of which crippled her steering. Repulse successfully dodged 19 torpedoes before finally being hit by several in succession. Both ships maintained discipline to the end. A murmur of pride and grief passed through the room. Even in defeat, the British spirit endured. Churchill nodded once, slowly. They fought magnificently. That must never be forgotten. But grief, however justified, could not be allowed to freeze the high command. Duty moved forward, demanding answers. Air Chief Marshal Charles Portal leaned forward, his voice weighted with the uncomfortable truth. Prime Minister, this is not simply a naval loss. This is the confirmation of a shift in warfare we have long suspected but never fully accepted. Aircraft, not battleships, are the decisive instruments now? General, Sir Alan Brooke added, the Japanese have demonstrated perfect coordination. Torpedo bombers, high-level bombers, reconnaissance lines. They hit us exactly where we were weakest. Dill agreed. Their pilots are trained, fearless. Their intelligence has been accurate, and they exploited the fact that we underestimated their range and capabilities. Pound's jaw clenched. We should have anticipated this, but without carriers of our own in that theater, the squadron had little chance against such concentrated air power. Churchill looked at him sharply. They should never have been left without air cover. No one could dispute it. For a moment, the weight of failure settled upon the naval staff. The loss of the battleships was not merely a tactical disaster. It was strategic, symbolic, and psychological. The Japanese had struck the pride of the Royal Navy and shattered the illusion that the Empire was untouchable. But the question that hung in the room, unspoken but sharp as a blade, was, what do we do now? Churchill straightened, his voice gathering momentum and force. Gentlemen, our task is not to lament, but to respond. Let us speak plainly. What does the loss of the Prince of Wales and Repulse mean for Britain and for the war in the Pacific? Portal answered first. It means Japan has freedom of action along the Malayan coast. They can land troops, bring supplies, reinforce their offensives without fear of naval interference. Without a fleet, Singapore is vulnerable, gravely so. Brooke added, their morale will be heightened. Their troops, already confident from victories in Hong Kong and the Philippines, will push harder, and our own forces in Malaya, already under-equipped, will feel the blow. Dill fixed his glasses, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. But it also means they have shown their hand. Their reliance on air supremacy offers us a blueprint. If we can target their carriers, those engines of their power, we may yet seize the initiative. Churchill nodded. Yes, carriers, air power, the new reality. The world shifts, gentlemen, and we must shift with it. Pound tried to speak, but hesitation caught him. His voice, when it finally emerged, was low. Prime Minister, this loss will cause outrage, despair. We must address it swiftly. And we shall, Churchill replied. But we must do so with truth. We must honor those who fell and remind the nation that tragedy does not end our fight. It deepens it. The room fell silent again, the echo of the disaster filling every corner. Far across the world, aboard a rescue ship, pulling survivors from oily waters, the men who had escaped the inferno clung to debris, exhaustion, and memories too raw to articulate. Some stared at the sky, remembering how the Japanese aircraft had descended like hawks, engines screaming. Others clutched each other, trembling but alive, but each man knew, without hearing any official report, that something fundamental in naval warfare had changed forever. Back in London, the High Command remained locked in discussion. Maps shifted. Strategies were redrawn. What had been lost could not be reclaimed, but what remained could still be defended. Churchill paced slowly, hands clasped behind his back. The gravity of the hour etched into every line of his face. When the world hears of this, he murmured, his voice softened but still firm, they will say British power wanes. They will say Japan rises unchallenged. but they will be wrong. He turned sharply. For wars are not won by a single blow, nor lost by one. We have endured setbacks before, far greater, and emerged stronger. This loss is grievous, but it is not the end. It is a call. Brooke looked at him. A call for what, Prime Minister? A call, Churchill answered, to embrace the future, not the past. Pound nodded slowly, understanding. We must rebuild our fleets around carriers, around flexibility, around the air arm. And we shall, Churchill declared. But first we must stabilize the Far East, reinforce Burma, strengthen India, send aid to the Dutch, and above all, prepare the Americans. Portal raised an eyebrow. The Americans are already engaged. Engaged, yes. Churchill replied. But they must be galvanized. The sinking of our fleet will send tremors across Washington. We must turn those tremors into resolve. Dill glanced at the map. Japan will expect timidity from us now. Churchill smiled grimly, then let us surprise them. Pound cleared his throat. There is also the matter of replacement ships. We've lost 2 of our finest. Churchill shook his head. We did not lose them. They were spent in the defense of freedom, and their sacrifice will echo through the whole of this war. But yes, replacements will come, stronger, faster, smarter. Portal interjected, but until then the Pacific remains precarious. It does, Churchill said, and that is why we speak now with absolute candor. He faced the High Command fully, his voice steady. What the British High Command says now will shape the future. Our words in this moment will ripple across every front. We must speak not only as strategists, but as leaders entrusted with the fate of nations. He paused. Let us say, then, what must be said. The room held its breath. We acknowledge the loss. Churchill continued. We honor the courage of the crews who fought with unmatched valor. We recognize the changing nature of warfare, and we vow to adapt accordingly. We admit the gravity of the moment, but we refuse despair, for Britain has been tested before, and each trial has forged us stronger. His voice rose, gathering that unmistakable blend of defiance and hope that had guided Britain through the darkest months of 1940. Let the world know that we do not crumble, we do not yield. The sea may take our steel, but it cannot take our spirit. Japan has won a battle, but not the war, and the day will come when the seas they think they have mastered will rise against them. Portal nodded firmly. We must also ensure our pilots understand what this means. Air power is the spearhead now. Brooke added, and our troops in Asia must be prepared for a hard fight, harder than any we anticipated. Dill looked solemn. We must be prepared for losses, but we must also be prepared for victories far greater than the ones we've lost today. Pound, though weary, found a quiet resolve. The Royal Navy will rebuild. We will learn from this, and we will return. Churchill's eyes sharpened. Yes, we will return, and when we do, the Empire of the Rising Sun will face a very different Britain. Outside the war room, London carried on in a haze of winter gloom. Civilians trudged through the streets, unaware of the blow that had just struck thousands of miles away. They were already burdened by rationing, air raids, and endless worry. The news would hit them hard. But the character of the British people was forged in weather far harsher than mere disappointment. When the announcement was made, there would be sadness, yes, anger too. But underneath it all, an unshakable belief that somehow Britain would find a way. Because it always had and always would. In the war room, as the meeting finally drew to a close, Churchill lingered a moment longer, staring at the map of the Pacific. The outline of Malaya, the narrow straits near Singapore, the sweeping arc of the South China Sea, they seemed somehow farther away now, almost unreachable. But he did not step back. Instead, he whispered to himself, barely audible, yet filled with determination. "We have lost 2 ships, but we have not lost faith. The Japanese will not break us. This is but the beginning." He turned away, coat swaying behind him as he strode toward the door, the weight of the empire carried in his step. Behind him, the high command slowly dispersed, each man keenly aware that history had shifted that day. Not gently, but with force. What the British High Command said in that moment would echo far beyond the walls of their bunker. It would echo across oceans and continents, into the hearts of sailors, soldiers, and civilians. It would remind the world that while steel may sink, courage does not. And though the Prince of Wales and Repulse rested now in silent graves beneath the waves, their legacy surged onward, shaping decisions, forging resolve, and lighting the path toward a future Britain refused to surrender.